Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 314 of the Canadian Football Countdown, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network and the Alternative Football Network. We're kicking off our first series of the offseason here. The CFL season has come and gone. We did our season wrap-up, our Grey Cup recap last week. Go back and check that out if you haven't already. But we're kicking off a 2025 CFL Season Deep Dive series here. Did this a couple years ago. Had a lot of fun with it. And we're going to go team by team throughout the offseason here and take a look back at their season. And, well, what better team to start with than the defending Grey Cup, well, now officially, I guess, defending Grey Cup champs as of a week or two ago, Saskatchewan Roughriders. We've got Adam here with me as usual. You know he's not going to miss an opportunity to talk about the Riders for the entire episode and have nobody tell him that he needs to be less biased. And we've got a special guest joining us who I'll introduce here shortly as well. But Adam, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing real good, Ryan. Of course. I mean, you know what? If I could talk about the Rough Riders for probably 3 hours, I would do it. But most times I kind of, got to look at least a little somewhat neutral on the Canadian Football Countdown. But, once every so often, I do get the opportunity to go and nerd out a little bit about the Rough Riders over on the channel that our special guest is from. So always enjoy the time whenever I get to talk to them. Of course, we've got Alex from the Piffles podcast. Alex, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. These last 2 weeks have just been a treat. Let me tell you that.
Hey, every time right now when I get to talk to Bomber fans, it's just a little special, just a little bit special, especially after the 5 years that they've given me before this.
You've earned it. You guys got the Riders green on. Well, I actually can't tell what colored shirt Adam has on. It looks like a black shirt to me. Is there Riders green?
I'm trying to get back the old school jerseys.
Gotcha. I had to pull out the Riders collectibles here. I've got Gainer the Gopher hanging out on my chair here for tonight as well. He came here to join the party, and yeah, we're going to chat through the Riders season here tonight. We're going to talk preseason expectations. We're going to go through chunks of the schedule, talk about the most notable points throughout the season, and then we are also going to talk about the playoff run and a little bit of off-season stuff as well. Figured we had to bring somebody from a specifically Riders podcast to help us do so. So welcome, Alex. Happy to have you here tonight. I'm going to quickly send out the social media posts that I meant to queue up and say while we were doing this. And I can do that while I'm talking live because I queued them up ahead of time. So that's great. Great showmanship there. Housekeeping notes to get out of the way before we begin. Of course, the Canadian Football Countdown is brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Game Time TV. You can learn more at GameTimeTV.ca or Facebook.com/GameTimeTVMB. And at the start of the show, we always want to acknowledge that the Canadian Football Countdown is brought to you from Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, the homeland of the Métis Nation, as well as from Treaty 4 territory, traditional territory of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis Nation. And finally, if you haven't already done so, and you've heard us mention it every episode, and what are you waiting for at this point? Check out the Discord community. Link is in the episode description. It's free to join us over there. Lots of discussion going on throughout the CFL offseason, and a bunch of Bomber fans eagerly awaiting to find out what's going to happen with their offensive coordinator situation this year. And I don't know if eager is the word I'm using with some of the candidates I'm seeing there, but that's a topic for a different day. Housekeeping notes are out of the way. Let's dive into the Riders season, and let's start off with our preseason expectations for the team. Looking back at 2024, 9-8-1 record, second in the West. I believe they fall to the Bombers in the West final, as they had for a number of years in a row. Disappointing outcome for them again. But coming into this year, they did some tinkering in the offseason. Let's start with you, Alex. What were your expectations for the Riders coming into this year?
Well, after 2024, it was just nice to get to the playoffs again after missing it the last couple of seasons, and to get to the West final, to have a home playoff game and then get to the West final. And it set the expectations so much higher for 2025 to the point where it was, if we don't get past the West final, if we don't at least get a Grey Cup berth, it felt like not a wasted season, but it felt like it wasn't a complete season. And I always thought the players were there, even in those 2 down years where they lost their final 7 games of the year. When you look at the Grey Cup championship roster, a lot of those players were on that 2022, 2023 teams. So it was a matter of coaching, and I truly believe they got the right guy with Corey Mace. And I felt that going into the season. So the expectations were they got to get to the Grey Cup. That's where it has to be. And lo and behold, obviously we're pretty happy here in Rotterdam right now.
For sure. I mean, myself, I think I had them finishing second in the West. I could be hallucinating. That was a long time ago at this point in time. But I feel like I was high on the improvements they've made, the development under Corey Mace. The only reason I didn't have them finishing first in the West this year was just not wanting to bet against the Bombers after 5 straight years, and after they somehow turned it around last season after the terrible start and still finished first in the West. But yeah, second in the West, first in the West, pretty close together. Adam, what do you remember what your projections were?
Yeah, I was exactly the same as you were, as Ryan. I was in that first, second, somewhere in there. I thought that, you know what, I was very optimistic about the team we had. The team we had on paper should have been a Grey Cup contender, and it was, and as we would see. But what I was worried about with the Saskatchewan Roughriders was the injury front, because that's been an issue how many years in a row. And nobody was getting younger on that team. You still had Hardrick, who was coming off of injury. You had Trevor Harris, who was coming off of an injury. You had AJ Ouellette, who looked like maybe he's going on the twilight of his career with a hip injury the year before. I think he had some hip pointer problems or some hip problems. So I was optimistic. I mean, I thought, you know what, if they can play through and they don't have injuries, this Rough Rider team is a Grey Cup team. But that being said, I was also on that other side where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get my hopes up because we've had so many injuries over the year. I mean, like I said at the beginning of the season, I believe I was worried I was going to get a phone call that the offensive line needed some more big farmer guys to come and fill the lineup, because usually that's what ends up happening in Saskatchewan is we end up with a pile of offensive line injuries. So optimistic was definitely on there, but again, nervously optimistic, I guess is the best word for it.
Yeah, every offseason feels like let's sign 10 offensive linemen and 5 of them will enter the season healthy with the Riders. And this year wasn't even all the Achilles injuries, but seems like we were all high on the team coming into the season this year. As we start getting into kind of the season breakdown right away here, we look at let's start with the first 4 games of the season. First bye week came in week 5. 4-0 start to the season for the Riders. 31-26 win over Ottawa week 1, 28-23 over the Ticats in week 2, 39-32 over the Argos in week 3, and then 37-18 dominant victory over the BC Lions in week 4. The hype was there coming into the season. You had to be feeling pretty good after a 4-0 start to the year, I imagine, right, Alex?
Well, yeah, and especially the way that those games kind of went. That season opener against Ottawa, they were up by a bunch going into the 4th and then just kind of let Ottawa back into it. The game against Hamilton, honestly, I don't really remember much of that game. But they rode a strong second and third quarter to take a lead into the end of the game. And that ending in Toronto, that was where Mario Alford had the kickoff return for a touchdown after the Argos tied the game with just a handful of seconds left. So, I mean, once you saw that, okay, maybe there's something special about this team. Game against BC, that was when Jake Mayer started with Trevor Harris. What was that, a concussion that he had? Or no, it was was it a concussion? It was something else.
Know.
I don't remember what he had, but he got that in the Toronto game. So it was, and I'll be the first one to say, I'm not a big Jake Mayer fan. I think he's a career backup, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't think he's there to lead, a team as the franchise quarterback. If he could just come in and play solid enough, throw 1 touchdown, throw an interception or whatever, but not lose the game, I would have been happy. The game against BC, that was it was the defense that really stepped up. because it was Jeremiah Mazzoli starting for BC in that one. And then that game turned right before halftime. Tavon Campbell baited Mazzoli into an out route throw and just stepped right in front of it and took it to the house before halftime and completely changed how that game went, because then after the momentum went back to the Riders, and in the third quarter they just kind of carried on from there, which, looking back at the season in hindsight, most of these games they had a slow start, solid second and third quarters, kind of let the teams back into it in the fourth, held on or let it slip away. And that's exactly what we saw in the playoffs. That's exactly what we saw in the Grey Cup game. They got up huge against Montreal, let them back in. So we should have known from those first 4 games, okay, this is kind of how the season's going to be. There's going to be a lot of close games, but this team found a way to win. And that's what good teams do, is every game is different. And yeah, they probably should have beaten Toronto by a lot more than 7 points in that game. Yeah, they should have beat Ottawa by more, but good teams find ways to win. And that's exactly what they did.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there. And, we'll get into obviously all these other teams' deep dives. And when we get to the Argos one, that loss to the Riders there in week 3 sums up the Argos' entire season to me, of just lacking the killer instinct for most of the season to pull out a win. And yeah, Mario Alford, I think wasn't it coming into that game also, Adam, where Mario Alford had some heat on him through the first few weeks of, is this guy going to even get cut almost? And I don't think anybody was necessarily saying that after that walk-off performance.
No, exactly. And I mean, Mario Alford, then I think he got nicked up afterwards, and we did see what could have been the future for the Rough Riders return game. And we didn't like it. Pretty much is the nicest way of saying it. You know what? The guy, I'm sorry, I can't remember the guy's name right off the top of my head, but he came in. I mean, he had some good runs, and in preseason we seen him against Winnipeg, and we thought, boy, hey, maybe Mario Alford's going to get a competition for his job. But in the end, it turned out, Mario Alford is much better in the actual full regular season game scenario. First 4 games of the season, though, I was getting a little nervous for the Saskatchewan, not because they weren't winning games. We expected to win against Ottawa. We went in, we played a good Hamilton team that just was starting to gel, right? They had a lot of turnover. They had a lot of new faces, and most of them were Bombers. But I mean, even then, Gavaya had a lot of pieces coming into Hamilton, and they had to learn how to play together. So you knew that you had a little bit of a chance there. Then again, the injuries, though, that were starting up. AJ Ouellette, first game of the season. He's got it nicked up. All of a sudden, we got to bring in Kadeem Carey. Justin Bertrand-Hudon, he came in, looked really good. All of a sudden, he was injured. So that was an issue. And then all of a sudden, again, game 3 or 4, or whatever it was, when I believe it was one of the Toronto players nailed Trevor Harris. That was a concussion, actually, now that I think about it. A head injury, because we don't say what they actually are in the league. But nevertheless.
Upper body injury.
Upper body injury, exactly. Anyways, Trevor Harris was out because of that. And honestly, I'll argue a little bit later on about the future of the Rough Riders here, Alex. I thought that actually Jake Mayer did not look bad when he finally had an offensive line in front of him. He had moments that he still had his throws that I kind of questioned, but I think you can work with him at least. But anyways, we'll get into that later on. We bring in Kadeem Carey because we needed a good running back, and for some reason Toronto decided he wasn't good enough. I mean, unfortunately, what happened to Kadeem Carey later on really sucked, because I thought Kadeem Carey was probably going to be one of those guys, maybe even pushing AJ Ouellette for a job. All of a sudden, AJ Ouellette comes back against Hamilton, looked really good. And then all was good again. But nevertheless, first 4 games of the season, it was nice to have 4 wins. But the concerns for injuries were starting to get me a little concerned about the Rough Riders. And again, you're right, Alex. The first quarter, we decided to, come into the game about 45 minutes late for the start of the game, I guess, because we always played the first quarter pretty rough. Then all of a sudden, second, third quarter, we were really good. And then, you know what? We can nail it in. We got the win. And most times it worked. Odd time it didn't. But we'll get into those later on.
Dre McRae was the guy who took over the return duties. I was looking that up while you were talking there when Mario Alford got injured. Yeah, a couple of points to touch on. I agree with a lot of what you guys said there about the slow finishes or letting teams back into the games, not playing a full 60 minutes those first 4 games. Like if you watched and paid attention to the trajectory throughout the season of us here on the podcast, and Adam, you'll back me up on this, like I was never sold on the Riders. I doubted them all season long. If we look back at my betting record, it's probably terrible on the Riders for this season because those first 4 games weren't that convincing for me. And you look at the teams they faced in those first games, Ottawa struggled this season. Toronto struggled greatly. Hamilton lost their first couple of games before they started to gel. BC didn't look good those first few weeks. They heated up later in the season. So it was hard for me to gauge, is this Riders team that good as the undefeated team they are, or did they manage to survive and hold on in a couple of easier matchups early in the season? But some convincing wins in there, and it's not how much you win by, it's how you get the win. So whether it's a last second walk-off kick return touchdown or it's a 17-point win, at the end of the day it counts the same in the standings. And when you were talking about the Hamilton game and struggling to remember a little bit of like specifics of the game, I feel like the Riders are going to be one of the harder teams for this deep dive series to go through chunks of the season, because when you are a really good football team at 12-6 record on the season and dominant for parts of the season, and all around dominant offense, defense, special teams for the most part, it's hard to pick specifics out of some of the games to me of this is who really stood out, because a large collection of players were standing out on any given day. And yeah, AJ Ouellette looked good early in the season. Dante Myers in week 3 had his first breakout game of the season, which we'll talk more about as we go along, what kind of player he was for the team this year. But a very good 4-0 start for the team coming into the first bye week. And then we move on to the second stretch of games.
One thing, Ryan, I just wanted to bring it up. Alex, I just wanted to know, when was the first concern that you had on Brett Lowther as a kicker? When did it start?
8 years ago.
Last year, for sure, 2024. I was leading the charge. I think it was the Toronto game where he missed a few kicks. It might have been Montreal. I don't remember, but there was a game where he missed 3 kicks, and I was like, that's it. Like, losing too many close games. These are points that they have. Like, the team's not good enough to overcome, 6 points missed off kicks. So find somebody else, at least bring in somebody. And then following that, he ended up being the best kicker in the league for the rest of the season. But then this year, it was so consistently inconsistent from him that basically from the get-go, I was like, please bring in somebody else. It felt like we were still resting on the laurels of him kicking the game winner in the Labor Day Classic from 2019. Like, that was 6 seasons ago. Why are we still celebrating that? That's ancient history at this point. But they were winning games, right? So they weren't losing any of these close games, despite, missing a couple or a kick here, a kick there. But he was just so inconsistent that the whole season I was just saying, like, I hope I eat crow on this, but please bring in somebody else, because if it came down to it, I don't trust him to make a game-winning kick. And it wasn't until, honestly, probably the Banjo Bowl, where they don't win that game unless he goes 5 for 5. He was their MVP in that game. And once that game happened, I was like, okay, maybe it finally clicked into him this year and he can turn things around. There was another game shortly after where he missed another kick, and I was like, of course. And in the Grey Cup game itself, too, when he missed that was a 38-yard field goal, I was like, oh, no, I've seen this too many times before. I know exactly what's going to happen. Even a single point would have made it a 2-score game. I'm like, that's it. Montreal's going to come back and tie it up, and it's going to come down to the very end. And sure, I mean, they got down to the goal line if it wasn't for that fumble by Shea Patterson. But he...
No, 100%. I mean, I kind of looked at it almost in preseason. I mean, when he was in Saskatchewan and he missed the one convert, and then all of a sudden it was a 26-yard field goal against Winnipeg, and misses another one. And I was like, okay, we got to have somebody behind him, because this is going to be a tough season otherwise. And you're right. Luckily, we had enough offense this year that we could maybe overcome that a little bit. But yeah, I was the same way. I was on the fence pretty much all season with Brett Lowther. Even in that Banjo goal game, I mean, I was sitting there the whole time. Okay, well, we're rocking him out there. Here comes another adventure of Brett Lowther, because it was all season for him. And I really hope that that's getting adjusted, or that's getting worked on right now, because that's one thing that needs to be done, is actually both sides of special teams, as far as I'm concerned. The field goal coverage and the punt kickoff yardage. I thought that kickoff was okay, but when we did our punts, Mikro did not do the job that he needed to do. So anyways, I just wanted to bring up Lowther here real quick.
No, I mean, Lowther was he was one of the major storylines for this team for this season, and he was under scrutiny. For a winning football team, he was the scapegoat, so to say, for any struggles the team seemed to have along the way, and it became a real concern. And I'm sure you were concerned throughout the second half of the season of exactly your fear you mentioned there, Alex, with the missed field goal in the Grey Cup, and is that going to cost us? And suddenly they bring in Campbell Fair as a little bit of competition there, and then he ends up doing worse in his first game. And it's poetic almost that we're sitting here today talking about Grey Cup champion Brett Lauder after the storylines and the up and downs he went through this season, and almost getting replaced, and the replacement not being good enough, and him coming in, and the team just being all around strong enough to overcome some of those misses along the way. And he had, like you said, couple games this season, he went 5 for 5 and really contributed to their victories there as well. So I'm hoping next year for him is a bounce back year, whether that's in Riderville, elsewhere in the league. I know he had a lot going on this year with, I think, personal stuff with his life outside of football as well. And that can easily be a distraction for you. And we've seen him have good stretches in the past. So I wish him the best going forward here. Let's move into the second stretch of games this season. I said we were going to go kind of to the bye week, but I think it makes sense to go to Labor Day here and just lump in those next two games, because Labor Day seems like the behemoth of the season, those couple of matchups there, or the focal point of the Prairie rivalry for sure. In week 6, kind of the first true test for the Riders, and they pick up their first loss of the year to the Calgary Stampeders, losing 24-10. But then bounce back against BC. This time the backups aren't there. It's Harris versus Rourke, and they pick up a 33-27 win in that one. Lower scoring 21-8 win over the Elks to follow that, and then a dominant 34-6 victory over Montreal. So they go 3-1 between the bye weeks here. And then coming out of the bye week in week 11, 29-9 win over the Ticats, and those pesky Calgary Stampeders, handing them their second loss. And we're sitting here now coming into Labor Day at an 8-2 record with only 2 losses on the year, happening to both be against the Calgary Stampeders. Adam, let's start with you. What went through your mind watching this team through this stretch of the season?
Well, the Calgary games, that was when I started getting that concern about our secondary slightly, and because I watched VA just absolutely bomb it on the Riders for one game for sure. I think it was even the second game. It was just a deep throw that Calgary always seemed to have the Rough Riders on. And I was like, oh, this is not going to be good. But if we're going to not be throws all the time. And to me, it seemed like the Riders were doing that a little bit all season. They were ball hawks. They wanted to go for that pick all the time. I mean, you look at Tavon Campbell, who I will arguably say later on, I think he might have been the best off-season signing for the Rough Riders, arguably other than one of the Tommies. I think he probably was one of the other ones that was really a strong signing. But what I look at is he did go for a lot of picks. And when he did try to get the pick, sometimes he did get a little bit where receiver would get behind him a little bit. That being said, he was a great defensive guy all season. And most times it didn't hurt the Riders, but against Calgary for some reason, yeah, it definitely hurt it a little bit. The Montreal was actually interesting because that one down as an L right when it was going to start. I thought, okay, we're going into Montreal. It's the wrong time. All the guys are going to go out partying. We're going to end up with probably a terrible loss out of this. Whatever, good enough. We'll just go to Montreal. We'll take our lumps, and that'll be the end of it. And all of a sudden they go and I think the Alouettes, I don't know, were they on our side of the field anytime during that game? I think maybe once. I mean, our defense has absolutely dominated that whole game. And I was thrilled. I was like, okay, now the Riders maybe are one of those they look like a contending team. Is the real sign to show. And then, of course, Labor Day and Banjo Bowl. You win both of those. Again, Labor Day, you kind of have down as a W all the time. Banjo Bowl, whatever. We're going to take our lumps, probably going back to Winnipeg. But honestly, like Kevin McAllister says at this time of the year, I'm not afraid anymore. Afraid going into Winnipeg and, taking it to them a little bit. So honestly, I enjoyed it. And it was pretty fun watching both the Banjo Bowl and the Labor Day this year, because finally I got to listen to one in my combine and actually they win one.
Yeah, we'll get into the Banjo Bowl, we'll get into Labor Day in the next section of games here, but you touched on a lot of the games here so far. How about you, Alex? What were you thinking? Anything else stand out to you from this section of the season?
Well, it was those two Calgary games. The first one where it was at Mosaic Stadium, that was actually the postponed game because of the smoke. And the next day, Calgary just came out and in the trenches absolutely dominated the Riders. Offensive line, D line, like it wasn't even close. That's both, like that score flattered the Riders, if we're being honest. And it was a 2-score game. It could have been a lot more. But at the same time, you look at Damien Alford kind of had that coming out party for the Stamps in that one game, having that big long touchdown for sure. And that was on a rookie cornerback making a start. So my worry wasn't so much on the defensive backs in that sense. It was in those trenches. And up until the Calgary game, the first one, the Riders didn't allow much in the run game. Calgary came in, Dedrick Mills had over 100 yards. Then the next game, I think it was James Butler had 100 plus yards. So then that was the kind of concern for me in that middle portion. Okay, well, what's going on with this run defense, giving up all these yards all of a sudden? Caleb Sanders, defensive tackle, was injured, didn't play those games. When he came back, the run game was back to where it was, not allowing guys over 50 yards. So it was the defensive line seemed to get a little bit better. They were getting a little bit more consistent pressure. They were leading the league in sacks for basically the entire season, especially at the beginning and middle part of the season. And the offensive line, outside of those two Calgary games, that's when we really started to find a real appreciation for what they had on that O-line. Saw it in 2024, starting 13 different guys, and they held up pretty well, all things considering. You start looking at Edwin Harrison, the O-line coach, and you're like, this guy's a pretty damn good coach if you're getting that kind of output from these guys. And you see that again in 2025. Whatever that man wants for a contract, sign him to it. Blow the operations cap. I don't care. Edwin Harrison deserves that with what he's done with this offensive line. And again, I think it was 12 different O-linemen that they started this season. What they were able to do, and then manage the ratio at the end of the year to have 4 Americans starting on that offensive line is almost unheard of in the CFL. To do that and keep Trevor Harris protected. That was the big thing coming into the season. If Trevor Harris stays healthy and you don't let him get hit, they have a chance. And he took so few hits this season that's probably one of the reasons why he's probably coming back next year, is they have very solid O-linemen, and they were able to find that depth because of all the injuries. But in that middle part of the season, it was just like, okay, well, Calgary's that team. Whatever, they just have that. They match up so well in the offensive line and the D line that, okay, well, when it comes down to the playoffs, may not be the team you want to play against. So looking back on it, I'm pretty glad that they didn't play the Stampeders in the playoffs, just based off the matchups early in the year. But that kind of middle stretch just before Labor Day and Banjo Bowl, again, was another nice stretch where they had, convincing win in Montreal, which doesn't happen very often. The game in BC, They had a huge lead going into the fourth and kind of let BC creep back into it. But I was feeling pretty good going into the Labor Day game.
Yeah, I mean, you have to feel pretty good about any game not against Calgary coming up after that, right? And that was the kind of the one fear at that point in time was like, okay, this team is pretty legit, just the Stamps might be more legit than them. And I mean, Calgary at the same time had just swept over that span. I think they swept the Bombers all 3 games there, and now they pull out 2 against the Riders, and it's really okay. Like Calgary is the class of the CFL, and then the Riders start kind of creeping up into that conversation with an 8-2 record is very good there as well. And this section of the season was when I feel like we were going back and forth on who was the top team in the CFL. It's Calgary, it's Saskatchewan, Hamilton threw themselves into the conversation, and that kind of changed every single week. I thought this was Trevor Harris's best section of the season as well, his best couple of games here. I mean, that first one against Calgary, he threw over 400 yards in that one. He had a couple other games where he was throwing 300, 350, a couple of touchdowns in there. And I've been a little hard on him, after Labor Day and his performances there. I thought they dropped off tremendously, but he was definitely up there as one of the top QBs in the league during this stretch of games here, leading into Labor Day. And yeah, I mean, good times keep rolling in Riderville, and they get those wins, and then it comes into Labor Day, and you never know when it comes into Labor Day. It doesn't matter what the records are. It doesn't matter if one team's 7-1 and one team's 1-7, or they're equally matched up. You don't know what you're going to get from these games as we start talking about that section of the season here. And we've got those 2 Labor Day 34-30 win over the Bombers there in Regina. Then we move into the rematch in the Banjo Bowl. They come into Winnipeg and do something they haven't done in a little while, which is win the Banjo Bowl 21-13. Still looking for that trophy. Who knows where it is to this day.
Winnipeg was never bringing that out if the Riders were going to win. I don't think the Riders would have taken it.
We should have taken it during the Grey Cup. I'm just saying.
We'll trade you the Banjo Bowl trophy for the Grey Cup. 1-for-1 deal.
We'll be fine.
I think we're okay. Yeah, we're fine. Don't worry about it.
I love that one. That just making all of the excuses for why they could not find the trophy or why the trophy was sold to fund different things. That was a great time of the year, was those 2 games there. So they're flying high out of that. The defense really steps up in those 2 games as well. Tavon Campbell, that you talked about Tavon Campbell already, Adam. That was the Tavon Campbell show. The pick 2 to seal the game against the Bombers in the Labor Day Classic with the last second interception on the 2-point convert to hold off the comeback. And then 2 interceptions, and the team registers 4 in the rematch the week later. And we're thinking, that combined with outside of the dud against Calgary in week 12 there, like before Labor Day, we're looking at allowing 9 points to the Ticats, 6 points to the Alouettes, 18 points to the Elks. And suddenly, like, this defense is really in consideration for it. This is a scary defense. And then everybody gets injured, and it all falls apart in week 15 against the Montreal Alouettes when McLeod Bethel-Thompson throws 379 yards and 3 touchdowns, including 238 yards to Tyson Philpott, 28 points in the first half, and the Riders lose that one 48-31 coming into I believe their final bye week of the season, if I'm not mistaken here. I know it's a small section of games there, but thoughts on the Bombers sweep there on Labor Day, and then the disappointment in Montreal heading into the bye week, Alex?
Well, those 2 games against the Bombers are always so emotionally charged. And the game before that against Calgary was a very physical game. So you have not only physically demanding games in those 3 games, but the emotions behind it with your 2 biggest rivals. That I'm not surprised that they lost against Montreal. Even, they just beat McLeod Bethel-Thompson pretty handily in Montreal a few weeks prior, but I think they were so emotionally drained that, and with the bye week coming up immediately after, not that they checked out, but they were just spent. They had nothing left in the tank. They exuded all that energy in those 3 games. And you can see those injuries start to pile up. It was Kerfala Exume who started at cornerback and got roasted by Tyson Philpott multiple times in that game. This is a guy who, great special teamer, should never see a down on defense ever again in his career, but they had to do it with the ratio and the way that it, kind of played out that way. They had to start a Canadian in the defensive backfield, and it obviously didn't work out for him. And it was great for Montreal, smart to just test him. He was on Montreal a few years ago. He won the Grey Cup with them in 2023. So they knew exactly what his strengths and weaknesses were, and they exploited it. And so it was, if you're going to lose a game, it might as well be to, a non-division rival. And that was the one to kind of check out of, I guess. But winning the Banjo Bowl, that was the big one. Like you said, Ryan, that was the first time they won that since 2018. And a lot of those games were complete blowouts. Like, they were done before halftime started. What was it? I think it was 2019. Was that the one where it was Bianca Andreescu in the U.S. Open against Serena Williams? We were watching that on our phones during the first half because that game was over. We were like, all right, well, this Banjo Bowl sucks. But then 2024, honestly, they were a wheel route catch away from Frankie Hickson from beating the Bombers in 2024 in that game. So going into that one, I felt, okay, they can keep it close. Will they win? Probably not. It's the Banjo Bowl. They usually, especially recently, lose that game. But if they can keep it close, we'll be okay. And I mean, the unfortunate injury to Zach Collaros there as well, too. Not something anybody likes to see, but Strevler came in and threw a couple picks, and I thought tried to do too much. And to me, that game was a kind of a microcosm of Winnipeg's season. Was they stopped running the ball. Brady Oliveira didn't really do a heck of a lot. So they were able to focus and get the win there. And yeah, it was just that Montreal game. Just that was the perfect storm for Montreal to come in and just beat up not a banged up team, but an emotionally and physically spent team.
I finally believe in the Riders after back-to-back wins over the Bombers, and then they dropped that game against Montreal, and I'm back to the drawing board there. Adam, your thoughts on that stretch of games there?
Yeah, no, I think it was just like Alex said. I mean, you looked what they did to the Winnipeg running back game. I mean, they shut down Brady all in the Labor Day. I think he had maybe 24 yards, something like that, maybe a few more. It wasn't a pile of yards for Brady Oliveira. Then they went into the Banjo Bowl, did the same thing. And again, the secondary was solid. Tavon Campbell was lighting it up. Unfortunately, something got lit up in him in the last play of the game in the Banjo Bowl, and that made him sit against Montreal. And you're right, Alex. If they put Exume on the field again, I'm looking the other way and shutting my eyes because that was ugly. Watching Tyson Philpott just burn him repeatedly.
Who would you rather have back there on defense, Amari Henderson or Kerfala Exume?
Oh, Amari Henderson, for sure. He just couldn't tackle. That was his big problem. At least he was in the the vicinity somewhere.
That is true. And I think he turned it around decently.
Yeah, if Amari Henderson wants to join the Buffaloes, I was just going to say, though, if Amari Henderson does want to come and play for the senior Buffaloes, he was a great checker, but he wasn't a tackler. He kind of used to try to check guys down, and it kind of was odd. But anyways, hopefully he's back next season. I guess, yeah, he did get injured there or later on in the year for Ottawa. But no, honestly, that's what I see when here. Montreal essentially had a chip on their shoulder for what we did to them in Montreal, I think, a bit. And they came down and kind of spanked us a bit. And I think it said in the CFL doc series when they went to the Grey Cup, Montreal remembered that one, and Saskatchewan certainly remembered. So, yeah, Other than that, yeah, it was. Then we went into a bye week, and we were hoping that some players got healthy because you're right, they spent everything they could on winning those games against Winnipeg.
Yeah, then let's get to our final stretch of the season here, and we can get kind of yada yada the last couple of games probably, because after they clinched, week 19 against the Argos with a win there, I believe they clinched first in the West, and so week 20 against the Bombers was one of the worst football games I've ever seen in my life, as they brought all of their backups, only to be topped by the worst football game I've ever seen in my life between Winnipeg and Montreal the week later when both teams brought their backups. But leading up to that, we had coming out of that bye week, a 27-25 loss to the Edmonton Elks. The Riders try to tie it up late. Tommy Stevens punches it in, but they failed the 2-point convert to tie the game on that one. 476 yards of net offense, but only 25 points to show for it for the Riders in that game. Then another low-scoring one, 20-13 win coming in against Ottawa after that. Giving up those unanswered points, almost a crumb back once again at the end of the game after Drew Brown gets pulled. Riders defense steps up great, 3 interceptions on Drew Brown, but offense seems to not be putting points on the board here. And then they get it done against the Argos, who I think cycled through a couple of quarterbacks in that game against the Riders there as well, and they get the W. I think it was Jarrett Daggy was the starter in that game because Nick Arbuckle had just gotten injured on the Argos side. So they get 2 wins out of 3 here coming out of that last bye week. They clinch themselves first place in the West Division, but I know my feelings coming out of this section and in the really everything after Labor Day was the offense is really stalling, and Trevor Harris doesn't seem as sharp as he was before Labor Day. He's 39 years old. That's pretty old for a quarterback. Is the fatigue getting to him late in the season is what I was starting to wonder during the stretch of games, because they weren't being as efficient on offense. And I know AJ Ouellette, he had a fantastic season, 1,200 yards, I think it was on the year, and he ended up in the touchdown department down the stretch as well. But really, it's continued the story of the defense to me stepping up in the latter portion of the season. Alex, what are your thoughts on this section?
I just wanted them to win games. I didn't care how. It was just, you guys have the chance to clinch first. I don't care if it's by 1. I don't care if it's by 50. Just win the game and earn your right to start resting guys. And with the amount of injuries that they had at the time and guys that they continued to lose in those games too, it was just hold on, guys. Please just scrape out a win here. So luckily they were up against, teams that were also having injury problems as well too, or, Drew Brown being awful in that game for Ottawa. But it also goes to show that even though the Riders had a ton of injuries, their depth really did step up. And that's something that Jeremy O'Day, the general manager, deserves a lot of kudos for. I know a ton of people in Riderville did not want him back the last couple of years and still had their doubts with him going into this year. But when you saw some of these guys step up, guys that we've never heard of, guys that just joined the roster, a couple weeks ago, they come in and they play solid. Not that they made huge impacts, but there was a couple of defensive backs that played pretty well. Sheldrick Redwine and Benny Sapp III. With 2 weeks on the job, they were thrust into starting, for Roland Milligan and Marcus Sales, 2 all-stars, and to basically not have their names called at all, which is a great thing for a defensive back. Showed that this team has some guys. They have the depth to be able to win some of these games where maybe they probably shouldn't have. And the game against Toronto was a little bit frustrating because that was against a 3rd string quarterback, and you'd like to see more than an 8-point win against a 3rd stringer. But at the same time, it was just, please just win this game, clinch first, get whatever help you needed to get that first place, and then just get everybody healthy for the playoff run. So I didn't take much out of these games, even the wins. It was just, just win and get where you need to be.
And they lost the last 2 games of the season, those meaningless ones, to Winnipeg and BC. So we talk about a 12-6 record, really a 12-4 record right? It's the way I consider it. And I know Harris played a lot in that last game, and they tried to get them some starting time for the playoffs there as well to not have too much rust. But very solid season overall. And yeah, they were able to clinch early and rest guys and get guys back. Adam, anything to add on the closing of the season here?
Other than it was a long 6-hour drive to watch a meaningless game in Winnipeg. Other than that, it was a pretty good run for the Riders. I think the only real notes that I had on this one here, you're right, Alex, it was depth that they needed to rely on. I mean, with Roland Milligan going down and a few other guys, Shane Ray going out, and there was a bunch of other injuries that came in, but you're right. They did a great job, and J.O. did a great job of bringing in depth. Another one was Lyon, that I thought came in that was with Montreal before he came in and stepped up when he needed to. So overall, the Riders had great depth. They did what they needed to do. Yes, they got up a little bit even more. I remember the Winnipeg game. I mean, second or third play in the game, Joe Robustelli gets injured, and you're sitting there, oh, great. Even though Joe Robustelli was kind of one of those guys that you were kind of subbing in and out once in a while, he was one of those guys that was always there when the Riders needed him, and you were kind of nervous of him being out for any length of time because he was a very good American wide receiver. He made Sean Bain Jr. this season. So I think that overall, like I said, it was a good part of the season for the Riders overall. The only thing else that I had for notes, I was watching more of the game within the game at that point. I think I was screaming more about Tonsi and his refereeing versus anything else in the season at that point. So, yeah. Overall, though, it was just waiting for playoffs to kind of get going.
Well, you touched on the receivers there a little bit, and we really haven't talked about them a whole ton. This team was stacked at the wide receiver position this year, and so I want to touch on them a little bit before we get to the playoffs here. Like, we saw glimpses in the second half of 2024 of what kind of special Keyshawn Johnson and Dante Myers could be, but they were still considered kind of those depth secondary pieces maybe a little bit last season. And this year is, okay, these guys are going to get starting roles, and they're going to be darn good in those roles. Well, they both finished over 1,000 yards, and for most of the season, it seemed one of them was going for 100 yards. One of those two was leading the team in receiving. And very early in the year, Sam Emilus goes down, I think like week 2, week 3, comes back week 7, gets injured again, and that's one of their most notable pieces. And I think probably Trevor Harris's most targeted player in any given year. And when he's healthy, you have him go down. You have Keon Schaefer-Baker goes down early in the season. He misses a huge chunk of the year, and suddenly the depth is being tested at receiver. And they rotated a number of guys through, right? Like Robustelli had a few big games there. I think he had a monster one against Calgary. Mm-hmm. Mitchell Picton will always get his handful of starts every single season for this team, it seems. And Del Duncan Busby gets in there for some starts as well. And I think I mentioned this on our season recap last week with Adam, that Tommy Neal to me was an underrated player for this team this season, who came into a starting role down the stretch, made some key plays in that Labor Day game. He made key plays all the way through. He finished second in the team in receiving touchdowns with 5, and I think he only started half of the season. And then Ajo comes in late and really doesn't do a whole ton for the most part, because he doesn't have to, because they have so much depth at receiver on this team. Anything from you, Alex? Any thoughts on the wide receiver room?
Oh, they have the deepest receiver group in the league, and it's not close. They might not have the best 5 in the league, but their depth is second to none in the CFL. Keyshawn Johnson, 1,000-yard guy. Shame that he couldn't get the knee right before the Grey Cup and wasn't able to play in that. But I'm a huge fan of Dante Myers. He's played 19 games in the CFL, has 1,400 yards. And this is a guy who's 5'9". Like,
that's pretty good.
Like, it's usually you see those taller receivers, 6'4", 215-pound guys that can put up some video game numbers when they come out to the CFL. But this is a guy who just, I don't know. There's something very special about him. The routes that he can run, the fact that he can take the top off the defense and be the deep guy, but he can also take those short slants and make people miss and turn them into big gains. So I love him. He's a free agent. I hope they pay him handsomely to stick around. because he's going to be very sought after if he reaches the negotiation window. Joe Robustelli, another deep threat guy that had a big game against Calgary and showed that he can be a guy. He was kind of talked about a little bit in 2024. Didn't get a lot of run this season, but still put up some good plays when they needed. And I mean, Keen Schaefer-Baker is great when he's healthy. That's the big issue with him, though, is he's hurt a lot. So that's going to be a very tough off-season decision for the Riders. Are they willing to keep him? Because he's going to command a pretty hefty salary, being a Canadian receiver and having the talent that he has. But if he's only available for half the games, your best ability is availability. So with a guy like Tommy Neal, who kind of comes here out of nowhere, very little fanfare coming from Toronto, and all of a sudden he makes one of the biggest catches in Rider history in the West Final to win that game. He's a guy that I think has to be back and absolutely earn that starter role. And Sam Emilus is a top tier guy in the CFL, not just in terms of Canadians, but overall one of the best receivers in the league. So you have, 4 or 5 guys there. Plus they have some very good young talent. Del Duncan Busby had a couple drops late in the season, which didn't help him, but still young, has a lot that he can, improve upon. Joe, they love his blocking, and he's one of those energy guys. He's just something about him. I don't know what it is, but just lights up entire room when he walks in, kind of thing. And the team feeds off his energy. So, and he's not afraid to get in there and block. And we saw with their running game this year that they needed receivers to block. And when he was in there, they followed him. So this is a very good receiving group. They're going to lose a couple of them to free agency. And whoever picks them up are going to get some very, very good receivers. But that's one thing they've done is drafted very well with receivers. They have Daniel Weeb now coming in from the U of S, who is a great kick returner and a fantastic football player. The only knock on him is his height. But we've seen the CFL, that really doesn't mean much. So looking for big things from him, maybe not in his rookie year, but a couple years down the road. But they're going to be okay for receivers going forward. They're quite deep with their depth.
Yeah, I think if you look at certain teams in the league, are kind of those factories, right? There's always Calgary seems to always manufacture, or BC especially manufactures quacks. It seems like Saskatchewan lately, we've been manufacturing receivers. I mean, you look not only in our own depth chart, you look at their depth charts in the league. I mean, Justin McInnes was a Rough Rider at one point. We had to let him go because we just couldn't keep everybody. Jake Herslow, we let go at training camp because we didn't need him. And boy, he's looked great in Toronto. So, I mean, there's so much depth that the Rough Riders seem to have. If there's one thing Jeremy O'Day knows how to do, it's get wide receivers. I guess offensive linemen know wide receivers. I don't know how that works.
I forgot Justin McInnes was a Rider at some point. I actually didn't know that Herslow was there in training camp. So, man, yeah, you add those two guys into the mix yet, too. And that is definitively the best top 5 in the CFL, I would say. But depth galore at wide receiver, and that was a big thing for them this season for sure. Let's talk playoffs here. West Final, they get BC coming to town. I know there's a little bit of smack talk going on coming in this game from, I think, Nathan Rourke is a little bit smack talk saying, what is he saying? It's our time, as I think he rushed it in for a touchdown. And, the Riders went right back and said, no, it's our time, as Trevor Harris finds Tommy Neal for the game-winning touchdown with 12 seconds left, I believe, and a 24-21 win to get themselves to the Grey Cup. Let's start with a quick thought on that one, Alex.
Oh, that game has taken years off my life. Not only was it was cold, but it wasn't brutally cold. It wasn't 2010 West Final in Calgary cold. But that was a cold day. But to me, that game was decided by the field goal. That Mace decided to kick with a couple minutes left, and we're thinking in the stands, like, what are you doing? You need a touchdown. Like, we'll worry about the field goal later, score the 7, tie the game. And we were just like, we're not going to have the time. We're not going to have the time, whatever. And then he trusted the defense to make plays. They did it twice, forcing 3 and outs. And the second one, when Rourke got stuffed on the kind of quarterback draw there on 2nd and 3, which I got to bring this guy up, AJ Allen. Made the stop on that play, holding him up before Revis and Thurman came in and finished off the tackle. Anytime the Riders needed a big play on defense, AJ Allen was around. So this is a guy who I hope nationally gets a lot of attention because he's been absolutely fantastic for this team. And it started really in 2024 on defense. He was a great special teamer before, but getting that chance to play on defense, play beside a guy like Jameer Thurman, maybe that kind of takes the shine off of a guy like AJ Allen because you're playing. I mean, you look at that Riders defense, you look who's all CFL on that defense. You have Micah Johnson up front. You have Mike Rose, who is excellent. Jameer Thurman, you got Roland Milligan Jr., Marcus Sales, and Tavon Campbell behind you. Like, these are big time players, but it was really AJ Allen making big plays when they needed it the most. And that was that one against BC, which gave the Riders a chance because if he doesn't make that tackle, BC can pretty much run that clock out. And who knows who the Grey Cup champion is.
That's true. Very true. Adam, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I was sitting beside Trevor Harris's dad and trying to convince him, look, there's still a chance. There's still a chance. It's still like there's an opportunity here. Like it's going to, and I'm sitting in the back of my head, we're done. It's over. I'm so sorry. This is going to be terrible. You know what? I'm just watching Nathan Rourke, and Nathan Rourke was doing magical things the whole game. He was getting out of tackles left, right, and center. And I was like, okay, we just gave him up yards of the first down. We had to call timeout already. The clock's going to burn off. Unfortunately, he's going to get the 4 yards or whatever it was going to be. You're right. If AJ Allen does not make that stop, we lose. It's over. Somehow he makes a stop. We end up magically running the ball all the way down the field. And I could see us doing that part. Once we got the football back, I was a little more confident because BC decided that they wanted to prevent themselves from winning. They went and they were going and protecting for that deep ball. And Sam Emilus was like, okay, fine. I'll go 15 yards up and go get it first down. And all that passing was the whole time until they got to whatever it was there. I think this 5 or 6 yard line and quick pass to Neal, and it was over. By the way, Dolman, that was a catch. Don't even catch. You really are Homer. Anyways, I won't get into that too much. But yeah, honestly, that celebration after that, I like I said, I learned that Trevor Harris's mom and dad are huggers, and I'm just glad to get that game out of the way because I definitely was questioning Coach Mace a little bit there when he let Brett Lowther walk up and make a field goal on minutes and whatever it was, 58 seconds left.
Your comment on the on that catch there and the Amar Doman thought on it just reminded me that we need to add to the rotation of games for the off-season episodes, football or elbow, and we'll just go through different screenshots and discuss that. Wild finish in this one. It was interesting too because the Riders were the better team record-wise coming in, but almost like in some cases considered the underdogs because BC was just such a hot team coming down the stretch, and nobody seemed to be able to shut down that offense, their best offense in CFL history, apparently. And they did a pretty good job of neutralizing Nathan Rourke in that game. They pull out the last second win, and they get themselves off to the Grey Cup in Winnipeg. They do not get the home locker room, unfortunately, but they do leave the city with the Grey Cup trophy. 25-17 win over the Montreal Alouettes. Last episode, we talked about the Grey Cup ad nauseum here on the podcast, but we can still add some quick thoughts in here as well. The defense did what the defense did all season long. They forced the turnovers, and they forced them when it mattered most with that fumble by Shea Patterson that they forced on the goal line. And you know what? Trevor Harris shut me up a little bit as a critic of him down the second half of the season with the best completion percentage in Grey Cup history, I believe. at 85%, and all around strong victory here by the Riders, even though it got a little dicey there at the end. But this is your non-Rider fan from Winnipeg view of it. Tell me your view and your stress levels as you're going through that game, Alex.
Well, honestly, I wasn't stressed going into that game. Every Grey Cup game I've seen the Riders go into, I'm a mess that whole week leading up to it. Absolutely stressed, and it wasn't confidence. I just like it was a quiet confidence. Like I really thought I think the Riders are going to win. I really do. But I never got that nerve. Even game day morning, I get a little bit antsy, and it didn't really hit me, and I'm not really sure why. But I will say with that game, I got to start with Davis Alexander. That guy is an absolute warrior to play through basically the hamstring tear that he did and hold up the way that he did until the very, very end. That guy he's something special. Montreal's got a good one there, and he'll be back in more Grey Cups. I'm absolutely confident in that. This guy he reminds me a lot of Bo Levi Mitchell did when he first came into the league, winning all your games to start. A little bit arrogant, but I love that coming from a quarterback. Like I absolutely love that. You usually don't see that from quarterbacks. They're supposed to be, be a pro and be the leader. I mean, this guy, you could tell how much he just wants to win. So for him to battle through and play that game and that last throw, I mean, he got a lot on that last Hail Mary throw. It got there where it needed to be. So testament to him. He was a lot of fun to watch. But yeah, it was that defense and it was the second and third quarter where they got the couple turnovers, and they got a quick start in the second half, taking the kickoff, a good Mario Alford kick return, and then scoring a touchdown on that drive to basically put the game away at that point. It was almost kind of weird not stressing out for, a Grey Cup game until the end when Brett Lothar missed that field goal. And then Montreal's driving the field. I'm standing up in my living room. I'm watching the game. I'm going like this. I could barely watch. And I'm like, I've seen this too many times. I know what's going to happen. Montreal's going to tie it, and something's going to happen. Montreal's going to get the ball and kick a field goal to win the game. Like I just almost accepted that was going to happen. But the defense made a play, which is exactly what Corey Mace has trusted them to do over the last 2 years, and they made one. And ultimately, that was the big difference, was that Shea Patterson fumble, and they were able to hang on from there. So it was a quiet elation in this household. I didn't go to the Green Mile and party. I know Steve, with my buddy with the podcast, he went there with his family, and a bunch of people that we know went out with him. So they had a great time. But for me, it was kind of relief after the game, honestly, watching the interviews and just a sigh, like, holy cow, they did it. And it still honestly doesn't really feel real. I don't know why. All the other, recent wins anyway, 2007 and 2013 felt much bigger than this for some reason. I can't explain it. I don't know why, but it's still pretty good.
I'm sure it is. Yes. Adam, anything else to add there for you?
Not really. I mean, I was in the same boat as Alex. I was sitting there and panicking at the boat when that last touchdown run there for the Montreal Alouettes. They were just slowly marching the ball down. Fumble recovery, first Malik Carney. And next year, all we're going to see in Saskatchewan is Carney for Prime Minister signs in the field. And I would laugh for probably endless amounts of time. Nevertheless,
I'll bet you on that one, Adam. I'm willing to bet we won't see that.
I could almost guess we won't, especially red ones. I don't think we'll see those for sure. So, anyways, no, I was the same way though. When we missed that field goal, I seen it in 2004. I thought, oh boy, somebody's loading up their bunning manure spreader right now and going towards Regina at full tilt. Luckily, the strike was called off when Shea Patterson fumbled it, because otherwise, yeah, it could have been ugly for a while there. But and then, of course, I was in McMahon Stadium when the certain game that we never speak about happened. I was walking out of there that day, and I'll never forget that one, unfortunately. But you know what? I thought it was going to happen again. I was like, oh no, this is, and I was the same way until we got that fumble recovery. And even after we got the fumble recovery, I just had this bad feeling in my back of my head when Davis Alexander got the ball back again. I was like, okay, they're gonna get a touchdown in this last play. Just watch. Something will bounce into one of the Montreal Alouettes' hands. Like, just until Tavon Campbell finally knocked that football down, I was still on pins and needles. But you're right. In the middle of the game, quite, it was good. And going into the game, I was a little, but not bad, because I figured, you know what? The Riders are technically the better team here, I think. And Alexander's kind of hurt, I guess, from what I all heard. So I was like, okay, we should be okay. But yeah, there was a little bit of nerves, but yeah, luckily it worked out for what it was. And again, I was a completely tough bracket again. So that's what matters.
Well, the Riders did it. They're Grey Cup champs for 2025. The season is complete. They're the champs. And now immediately work goes into running it back again in 2026 with the repeat. And let's touch on super quick here at the end. I know it's super early in the offseason. A lot of moving parts still to come. For this team. So it's hard to make projections this early on. And we're kind of in a weird spot for this segment compared to other teams where we're talking about a team that just won the Grey Cup, was an all-around solid team, didn't have a ton of holes necessarily, and everyone's a free agent. I know I saw, and I pulled it up here, that Alex's co-host Greg on the Piffles podcast posted on X at one point a screenshot of the Riders depth chart for the Grey Cup and then crossed out everybody who's a free agent. And there is hardly anybody left on there. You've got Ajo, Collins, Furland on the offense. That's pretty much it. Some big names like Milligan, Sales, and Thurman on defense that are under contract still for next year. Brett Lauder's coming back as of now, but not really anybody else signed for next year. So I don't know. How are you approaching the offseason if you're the Riders here, Alex, to try to bring back the championship once again?
Like I said, they're going to lose a lot of good talent. I mean, that happens you saw it in Winnipeg as well. Everybody wants a piece of the championship team, right? They want that championship formula in the locker room. So some guys will make more money elsewhere based off that. I think it all starts and ends with Trevor Harris, because all four quarterbacks that they have are free agents. So who else is out there? Is there anyone better than Trevor Harris that's available? No, there's not. So if you can somehow keep your offensive line, and if you can, I don't think they'll start 4 American offensive linemen next year, but if you start 3, I mean, you're probably doing pretty well to keep Trevor Harris healthy. So if you can do that with a 40-year-old quarterback next year, that's where it starts and ends. And it's, I mean, that list is so long. I don't even know where you start if you're Jeremy O'Day. Probably with the Canadians, you probably go there first, because we see that generally speaking, the Grey Cup champions are the ones that have a very good quarterback and the best Canadians in terms of depth in the league. So I think if they can knock off a couple of the receivers, get Sam Emelis back, obviously he's probably the big one on offense outside of Trevor Harris. You keep Jamarcus Hardrick, and then you start just who wants to be back and who wants to test what's out there. I think they're going to have a lot of guys that want to be back, but at the same time, they deserve the right to go out and see if they can make more money elsewhere. And you can't fault anybody for that. So they're going to lose some good players, but we saw the depth, show up We talked defensive backs with Redwine and Benny Sapp coming in and playing pretty well for the Riders. Is CJ Rivas back? I don't know. He's one of the probably more underappreciated superstars in the league. He deserves to be paid like the superstar he is. Is he going to get that in Saskatchewan? I don't think so. I as much as I'd love him back because he's great, he can play anywhere on that defense. Maybe that's somewhere a guy you save a little bit of money on and put that towards more depth pieces instead. So when I look at this roster, yeah, you're going to have to try and keep, out of those 45, I mean, you can make a top 30 list of the guys that you want back from that list, but realistically, it's probably 20, 25 that are going to come back. You're going to lose, 15, 20 guys here. I don't envy Jeremy O'Day with negotiations because they're all going to want more, and it's just frankly not going to happen. But I think the first domino is Trevor Harris. If they get him to a pretty friendly contract and can save some of that money and invest it in the O-line, or keep Sam Emelis and KSB and Dante Myers and Keyshawn Johnson at receiver, then they'll be doing all right. But it's going to be a tough off season for Jeremy O'Day to try and keep as much of that band together as possible.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a tough task no matter what you do, especially when you win a Grey Cup. If I'm looking at it here, yes, I would like Trevor Harris back as a Rider fan, because he is one of those quarterbacks that I think is probably one of the best that you can get. That being said, I really, really hope that they have a plan in place to go and have something behind him, whether it's a Jake Mayer or it's somebody else for the future, because Father Time has been undefeated. We've seen it with Anthony Calvillo overplaying a little bit too long, and all of a sudden Montreal had 5-6 years of kind of floundering around trying to find a quarterback. I've seen it with Calgary ever since Bo Levi Mitchell has left. They really, again, Vernon Adams gave them their spot now to stabilize it, but they were kind of in that spot. You have looked over at Edmonton. They've been hoping that Trey Ford has been going to take that spot, and really he didn't. They had to bring in Cody Fajardo to finally. So I really hope that Jeremy O'Day has a plan in place that goes and allows Trevor Harris to come back and be the starting guy, or at least start to learn how to develop a younger guy behind him, whether it's a hope that San Francisco let's go quarterback and he becomes, that would be the ultimate but I mean, otherwise, they need to get a plan in place, though, to get that next quarterback into Saskatchewan. Running back wise, AJ Let's look good. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a very good running back, and I'm sure that's what they're going to go with. But when you hear a certain other quarterback or running back is available that has a Canadian passport, I won't say which because I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. That might be an option that our running backs coach would love to have another Canadian running back to kind of mentor and bring up. The other one also that I'm looking at is, you're right, wide receiver. Sam Emelis needs a contract. I think he's probably one that's kind of a non-starter. You need to get him back. But they're going to have other tough decisions. Keon Schaefer-Baker's one of them. You're right. He's going to be a guy that you look at him and say he's productive when he's in, but the key word is when he's in. I think that if you can get a younger guy, and we've got Daniel Weed coming up, coming out of the U of S, I think that he could be a guy that maybe eventually takes that spot away from Keon Schaefer-Baker, or is maybe the one that goes and fills in for Duncan Busby and maybe starts competing for a spot over there. So it'll be interesting to see what the Riders do on that side of the thing. Defense, I'm sure that there's a lot of defensive players that will not play for anybody but Corey Mace, by the way he kind of controls that room, by the way he does things. So I'm not as worried about the defense, because I think when Corey Mace puts out the thing saying, okay, who's coming back, Jeremy O'Day is going to get a lot of phone calls. But on the offensive side of the football, I think we need to go and we need to find some more guys in there. And you see who comes back. It'll be very interesting for Jeremy O'Day to see what he does.
I think we're going to see some of that Mike O'Shea effect here with Corey Mason bringing back the core of this team, and that's going to bode well for their championship potentials for the next couple of years as well, because they have a pretty solid all-around roster, and Mace seems like that player's coach that everybody loves and is excited to play for and run through a brick wall for. And so I think a lot of those guys are going to come back. And one of them, you talked about running back. Surely the Canadian you're talking about is Sean Thomas Erlington of the Montreal Alouettes, right, Adam? When you talk about Canadian running back. No, obviously you're talking about Brady Oliveira. He's going to be the big name that every team is going to probably be in talks with. I cannot see a scenario where the Riders do not bring back AJ Ouellette and where Ouellette does not come back as the running back. This guy is the focal point. They could market the team around just him. I feel like just his personality, style, and everything. And I know they have done some marketing opportunities with him. And his comments at the Grey Cup about how he went from a team who didn't want him anymore to a team who made it pretty clear they wanted him, and he feels like he's wanted here in Regina. No matter how much it costs, I don't even know if cost is there for him. Cost is there for everybody, I'm sure, to some extent, but he seems like the perfect fit to be with this team for years to come there. And I'm with you, Adam. I don't mind bringing back Trevor Harris necessarily for another year here, but I want to know what that contingency plan is, definitely, because I'm not in the camp that Jake Mayer is the guy anymore, even though I was high on him when he started in Calgary. I feel better about the Riders scenario with Harris coming back than I do about the Bombers with Collaros, but still equally concerned for the future for this team. So it's going to be an interesting offseason for this team, and signings will come a mile a minute, I'm sure, over the next couple of months. And Jeremy O'Day is going to be a very busy guy, but I think he will take being busy after the season that the team produced this year. It's a good busy. It's a good problem to have all of these guys that they need to sort through here for sure. That's our season deep dive for the Riders here. I don't know, any extra final thoughts on the season here from you, Alex, before we get into wrapping up the show?
I'll throw this out to you guys. Maybe this is a topic for another show. We did this on the Piffles podcast this week, talking about quarterback succession plans. Is there actually one? Is there a succession plan? Because when you look at one-year deals in the CFL, there's so much movement. If you were Hamilton a couple of years ago, if you had a succession plan, you probably don't bring in Levi Mitchell. Not when he was, looking like he was finished. All of a sudden, he's back to being one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the league, and he was looking excellent this year. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you'd like to have that young guy in place, but maybe let somebody else develop him for a couple of years while you still have your guy and bring him back. So yeah, you'd like to have that succession plan, but is there actually a succession plan? It's so different than the NFL, where you draft a guy and you start him right away. Or if you're Green Bay, you draft him and play him 3 years later, right? But that's going to be your guy going forward. In the CFL, you don't know that. You really don't, not with how often players move teams. So it's maybe that's a discussion point for you guys later. But I think for every team, you can, except for maybe Montreal, right, and BC, maybe you can kind of have that conversation about.
Yeah, I would say Alexander is kind of the focal point of the one of the exceptions in that category. Probably Alexander, Rourke. I would even throw out Chad Kelly, who was behind McLeod Bethel Thompson, all of a sudden took over as a starter, as those kind of succession plans, so to say. But I don't think they're to quite the level of the NFL, where Alexander is the one that was around for a couple of years in a third and a fourth string role. He really stands out to me in that department. I think Rourke was maybe a backup or third string for a year or two there as well. And Kelly, I think, only had 1 season. So I think there is merit to that. And we see that quite often, that you develop another team's starter, just like the Bombers did with Drew Brown, who went over to Ottawa. And I'm sure we can think of another bunch of other scenarios here as well. So, yeah, I think there's merit to what you're saying there. Adam?
I don't know if you really want to call it a succession plan per se, right? I mean, I think what and the better way of describing it would be is who's your insurance plan? Are you comfortable with a Jake Maier being your insurance plan? Are you, as the Toronto Argonauts with Chad Kelly getting injured, a good insurance plan? Is Nick Arbuckle your insurance plan? Obviously good this year. Same in Edmonton. Trey Ford came in, was poor, but they had a good insurance plan with Cody Fajardo in there. Another team, though, the Calgary Stampeders, their insurance plan was didn't end up very well for them. The odd times that you did see him in there, right? I mean, you looked at Vernon Adams. He didn't when it wasn't Vernon Adams, that team did suffer quite a bit. Same thing in Montreal. Their insurance plan was throw anybody. I guess it was technically McLeod Bethel Thompson was the thought, but when he started flailing, there was no insurance plan clearly on the backside. So you got to have that guy that you're building as insurance, I think, as a big thing. Saskatchewan's got, I think, a pretty good one in Jake Maier. When they need him in a pinch, he's a great quarterback. When he's think that Jack Cohn eventually could be that insurance plan going. Being said, he's a younger guy. So in the CFL, you have the insurance plans and then you have your starting quarterbacks, I think is the way I would more describe it.
Yeah, I like that. And you kind of need 2 or 3 or 4 levels of insurance plans. If you're the Montreal Alouettes this year, who signed we went through 6 quarterbacks or something like that, and are just lucky that Davis Alexander was healthy for that stretch drive to even make it to the Grey Cup, because it was a tale of 2 stories. Yeah, it's an interesting topic. I know we do coming out of the off season into the preseason. We always rank our top 5 quarterbacks of the year on this show, and that gets into an interesting debate of the quarterback rooms and the contingencies behind them and the insurance policies there as well. So I like it. But yeah, let's get into wrapping things up here. I think we've done a pretty good deep dive into the Riders season here. Thank you, Alex, for joining us for this. It's been a lot of fun having you here join us here. Next up on the podcast, hoping to continue this series kind of weekly, bi-weekly, as I'm able to schedule guests in to join us to talk about some of these other teams along the way. So stay tuned for that, everybody. And we did say last time, Adam, that we were going to come back and talk coaching news on the next episode. But I kind of want to just wait till Toronto figures out what the heck they're going to do before we talk about that. So maybe we'll wait another week until that happens to get that all sorted out.
I might be old gray at about 60. I might be gray at about 65 until they decide who they're going to for a coach. By the way, it's
well, sounds like you're well suited to be a head coach in the CFL then. Great. So stay tuned for that. To get notified when our next shows are coming, of course, you can follow us as a show on social media at CF Countdown Pod on X, on Blue Sky, Facebook.com/CF Countdown Pod as well. Join the Discord community. The link is in the episode description. It's free to join there. We always post that along with a lot of other things in the Discord as well. So you can get that info there also. All the other great shows around the Canadian Football Podcast Network at CF Pod Network on X, such as the Piffles podcast, where Alex comes from. He's part of that network as well. And the Alternative Football Network at the official AFN on X, or alternativefootballnetwork.com. You can check out the other shows going on there as well. Alex, thanks again for taking the time to join us. We went way over the time we promised you, so I hope that's not an issue.
Not a problem. Love it. I always love talking football, so anytime you guys need.
Right on. Well, take a minute before we wrap things up here. Where can people find if they want to hear more from you and the guys on the Piffles podcast, and anything else you've got going on as well?
Same as you guys. We're on all the social medias. Follow us at Piffles Pod, and then we have the website pifflespodcast.com. So make sure you go out there. And I'm always at Real Alex D.
Sounds good. Is there a fake Alex D?
I looked it up once, actually. It's a suspended account now.
Oh, all right. Well, you're the real deal, so
yeah.
No imposters here.
No.
Adam, what about you? Where can people find everything you got going on?
Well, you can find me at Adam Stewart 1. Most times I'm either yapping about farming or yapping right now a lot about Buffalo senior hockey because, Saskatchewan and senior hockey, if there ain't Rider season, it's hockey season essentially. So yeah, you see me talking a lot about that. But hey, I'm keeping my eyes open at the CFL stuff, especially what's all going on in Toronto. If I can finally laugh at the Winnipeg Blue Bombers for signing a different offensive coordinator before letting theirs go. I mean, I'm still watching the CFL stuff of what's going on over there, for sure. I mean, you can follow me, though, at Adam Stewart 1 if you're looking for kind of some random info about random things.
Sounds good. You can follow me at Cooper Trooper 42 on X or Blue Sky, but it's not worth it, so don't do it. I don't post anything, but if you want to up your following account, go ahead and do so. Tweet at me. I might tweet back. Try it out, see what happens. I don't know. You can find Trey at Trey MB Harness. Mike is at Mike Garrell if you want to follow them as well. Whatever podcast platform you're listening on, we appreciate if you do all the fun things. Leave us a like, a comment, subscribe, rate, review, share the show with your friends, share it with your non-friends, share it with Riders fans, share it with non-Rider fans. Help us grow the show. We always appreciate that. And on behalf of Adam and special guest Alex here tonight, I'm Ryan saying thank you for listening. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.